Dear students, in this module, we will discuss about the theory of demographic transition, criticism of the theory of demographic transition. The demographic transition theory is most acceptable theory than other theories of population because it was developed by studying actual population growth trends in the developed countries of Europe. Nearly all European countries have presented through the first two stages of this theory and are now in the final stage. The theory of demographic was proposed in 1929 by the American demographer Warren Thompson. He observed transitions in birth and death rates in industrialized societies over the previous 200 years. Most developed countries have completed the demographic transition and have low birth rates. Most developing countries are in the process of this transition. The theory of demographic transition is based on the study of population trends of the advanced countries of the world, such as those in Northwestern Europe, that is England, France and Sweden. According to this theory, every country passes through three stages of population growth. They are: the first stage, the birth rate and the death rates are high and the population growth rate is low. And next stage is the birth rate remains stable but the death rate rapidly decreases. As a result, the growth rate of population increases rapidly. And third stage is the birth rate starts declining and trends to equal the death rate. The growth rate of population is very low. The three stages have been further divided into 5 stages by C.P. Blaker in 1895 to 1975, which are the high stationary phase, which is marked by high fertility and mortality rates. During this stage, population growth rate is expected to be low. The early expanding phase marked by high fertility and high but declining mortality. During this stage, population growth rate will be accelerate. The late expanding phase with declining fertility but with more rapidly declining mortality. During this stage, the population growth rate will decelerate. The low stationary phase with low fertility balanced by equally low mortality. During this stage, population growth rate is expected to be low, and the declining phase with low mortality, low fertility and an excess of deaths over births. During this stage, population growth rate is expected to be negative. Usually, the three stages are commonly discussed by combining the third and fourth. Blaker's stages, third and fourth stages as the third stage. The fifth stage is not considered as it applies only very small number of countries like France and Japan. The time for different stages is represented on horizontal axis and annual birth and death rates per thousand population on vertical axis. Before the 19th century, in first stage, birth rates in Western Europe were 35 per thousand and death rates have fluctuated around 30 per thousand. Thus, the growth rate of population was about 5 per thousand population. Stage 1. In the stage, the country is backward and is characterized by high birth and death rates, with the result that the growth rate of the population is low. People mostly live in rural areas. The economy is predominantly agrarian and their main occupation is agriculture, which is in developing state. In this state, what happens? Many people are unable to access health services and modern health services. This stage will yield very low result of fertility. The secondary sector is dominated by few basic industries, manufacturing, light and small consumer goods. The tertiary sector, which consisting of transport, commerce, banking and insurance, is underdeveloped. All these factors are responsible for low incomes and extreme poverty levels among the masses. A large family is regarded as a necessity to augment the low family income. In such a state, children are considered as an economic asset to the society and parents. During this period, children are used for bread winning and children became an asset to get the income. They derived income from the children. There is high illiteracy. Children's attendance in school is low and school dropout rates are high. Why school dropout rates are high? The children are engaged in labor work or in another income earning work. So this resulted in the school dropout rates. Next point is, society is not expected to burden itself by educating children. The existence of the joint family system provides employment to all children in keeping with their age. Thus, a child becomes an earning member even at a young age, providing a helping hand to his parents in domestic work. The family members, that is, parent itself, promoted child labor in that particular society. This resulted low education, low participation and illiteracy rates are very high. Family is the only old age insurance. Thus, more children in a family are regarded as an insurance against old age by their parents. Being illiterate, ignorant, superstitious and fatalist, the people are against any methods of birth control. Children are regarded as God-given and thus preordained. Being childless is regarded as a curse and the parents are looked down upon by the society. All these economic and social factors are responsible for a high birth rate in the country. In the second stage, the economy enters a phase of economic growth. Agriculture and industrial productivity increase and transportation develops. There is greater mobility of labor. With economic prosperity, household income increases and educational institutions expand. Gradually, society becomes more literate, people get more and better quality food, medical and health facilities are expanded. People have access to proper treatment and medication. The death rate goes down, but the birth rate is stable. People are not inclined to reduce the birth rate because with economic growth, employment opportunities increase and there is more earning potential. With improvements in diet and standard of living, life expectancy increases. There are no deliberate efforts to limit family size because of persistent dogma and taboos family planning. It is difficult to break with past social institutions, customs and beliefs. As a result, the birth rate remains at previous high levels. In the third stage, fertility rate declines and tends to equal the death rate, so that the growth rate of population declines. As population growth gains momentum and people cross the subsistence level of income, their standard of living rises. Technological advantage leads economic growth. Literacy rates improve. There is expansion of educational facilities. Education opens the way to more knowledge. It instills self-discipline, the power to think rationally and to future. Old customs, dogmas and beliefs are gradually discarded. An individualistic spirit is developed to break down of the giant family system. Men and women prefer to marry late, desire to have more children to supplement parental income declines. People readily adopt contraception. A car is preferred to having a child. Increased specialization in skills following rising income levels and the consequent social and economic mobility make it costly and inconvenient to have many children. The theory of demographic transition is the most widely accepted theory of population today. It does not give too much significance to either the issue of food, as in the Malthusian theory, nor develop a negative outlook towards population growth. It is also more rigorous and broad-based in its approach than the theory of optimum population, which considers only the increase in per capita income in its model, neglecting other influencing factors. The demographic transition theory is most acceptable theory than other theories of population because it was developed by studying actual population growth trends in the developed countries of Europe. Nearly all European countries have passed through the first two stages of this theory and are now in the final stage. Criticism of the theory of demographic transition. Sequences of stages are not uniform. Critics point out that the sequences of the demographic stages have not been uniform. For instance, in some East and South European countries, Spain in particular, the fertility rates declined even when mortality rates were high. Second point is, birth rate did not decline initially in urban areas. Nolstein's assertion that the birth rate declined initially in the urban population of Europe is not uprooted by empirical evidence. Countries like Sweden and France with predominantly rural populations experienced decline in birth rates to the same extent as countries like Great Britain, who had a predominantly urban population. And third point, expansions of birth rate decline vary. Explanations of birth rate decline vary. The theory fails to give a fundamental explanation for the decline in birth rates in Western countries. In fact, the causes of decline in birth rate are so diverse that they differ from country to country. This theory applies to the developing countries of the world. Backward countries such as those in Africa are still in the third stage, whereas many developing countries are either in the second or in the third stage, where the death rate is declining faster than the birth rate due to better medical facilities and family welfare policies. and programs of the government. However, India's birth rate is declining very slowly, with the result that country is experiencing a rapid increase in population. Thus, economic demographic models have developed to include a fourth stage of population growth. One such model is the Cole-Hoover model for India, which has been extended to other developing countries. Such adaptations or modifications have improved the universality of the theory's application. Several questions are raised in this context. Can this theory provide a theoretical explanation of the forces that caused demographic changes, especially as they are related to fertility? Does it have any predictive value? In other words, can it be used for predicting the sequence through which developing countries would pass? Such questions have inevitably led to a great deal of unfavorable criticism of the theory of demographic transition. The critics of this theory point out that experiences of the various European countries were not uniform, in the sense that the sequence of the stages and described in the statement of the theory were not the same. Studies show that in Spain and in some countries of Eastern and Southern Europe, fertility decline occurred even when mortality was very high. In some countries like the United States, the growth rate in the post-transition stage was probably higher than in stage 2 and stage 3 of the demographic transition. Note that some studies claim that fertility declined initially in urban areas was found to be untrue to some countries. This theory also cannot explain the phenomena of the baby boom in Western countries after the economic recovery and the Second World War. Another criticism of this theory arises from the fact that it does not provide a theoretical explanation of an important force, fertility, which brought about the demographic transition. Though it is a fact that fertility did decline in all the Western countries, the conditions under which it declined were diverse. Demographers have recently arrived at the conclusion that the decline in fertility in Europe is a very complex phenomenon which has not yet been fully understood. This theory also does not provide fundamental explanations for the fertility decline, nor does it identify the crucial variables involved in the process of the fertility decline. Therefore, it does not have any predictive value. In all fairness, it must be mentioned at this point that the theory was aware of its limitations. The most crucial questions to be considered is, can the theory demographic transition be applied to developing countries? It is well known that developing countries have recently experienced a phenomenal reduction in death rates, as a result of which there has been a tremendous increase in the rates of population growth. According to the theory of demographic transition, the reduction in the birth rate is a byproduct of industrialization and modernization. In the face of very rapidly increasing population, however, it is not possible to wait for industrialization and modernization to bring about the required reduction in fertility. In such a situation, it is difficult to maintain with any degree of confidence that the theory of demographic transition is also applicable to developing countries, and that what happened in the West in respect of population growth would be duplicated in developing countries. Thus, in the strictest sense of the term, the theory of demographic transition cannot really be considered as a theory, though it does provide a useful framework and means for wider empirical generalizations. Thank you.